The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the PowerGrid training session. This is Olivia. I'm the Product Adoption Manager at CRM Fusion, and I will be giving the training today. It looks like everybody is in listen-only mode. That's typical for these sessions. So in order to facilitate asking questions, I just ask that you type them in to the questions area of the GoToWebinar control panel. And as we go through the session, I'll keep an eye on that. If any questions come in, I will read them out loud, make sure I provide the answer back so everybody can benefit. And this is a pretty laid back session, so you guys don't have to wait for me to ask if there's questions. If they come to you, just type them in. And like I said, I'll keep a constant look at this. So if you ask something that maybe jumps ahead or falls back, I'll just table it and address it at the appropriate time. So of course, if there's any questions before we get started, feel free to start typing those in now too. If you want to minimize your GoToWebinar bar, there should be a white arrow with an orange background that you can click, and it should take it down to a little bar. Okay, today is a quick 1-hour session. And you should be seeing on my screen here that we're already logged into DemandTools. So you see the DemandTools Today page. You've got your tile for self-help, which will take you to our help documentation and search for our knowledge base. We've got live training. Of course, you've seen that because you're here today. This is just the schedule and the ability to register. And then the tech support tile. If you qualify for technical support, you can log a case by clicking that tile. If you would like a recorded version of this session, you can click there and also make the request. Even those of you who don't qualify for technical support, if you want a recording, it's perfectly fine to log a case for it. We'd be happy to send it to you. I know it's frustrating after training to email us and say, hey, give me the recording. Some people want them, some people don't, which is why we don't blast them to everybody. Coming soon, though, hopefully we will have a place where you can just go out and grab the trainings. You don't have to wait to ask. You can just go get them. So be on the lookout for that. It should be coming up soon. And then, of course, at the bottom, we have some social media stuff, our latest tweets, as well as anybody who's tweeted at us or about us. And then how to stay in touch with us on Twitter, LinkedIn, and then a link to our YouTube channel. Over on the left-hand side, you're going to see PowerGrid under the maintenance tools. Now, if you click that white question mark with green background, that's going to take you to PowerGrid specific help documentation. Okay, it's going to take you here, and you can see there's some subfolders. And these are items we're going to discuss as we go through this session, but I want you to be aware of where you can find those resources because there's a lot of information. PowerGrid is fun to use, and I think it's pretty intuitive once you get used to it. A couple things might throw you in the beginning, but we're going to talk about all that. And right-clicking is a big deal in here. So if you're ever looking for an option and you're like, I know I saw it, I just can't find it, try right-clicking. All right, let's go ahead and launch the module. And at a high level, what is PowerGrid? It allows you to pull down data from any standard or custom object into a grid environment where you can manipulate that data. So PowerGrid is a data manipulation tool. It does not create records or delete. Well, I take that back. It can delete records. It does not import, though, but you can edit, delete, and of course you can export the results that you have in your grid. The nice thing about PowerGrid is that it can be one of those tools similar to MassImpact where you make what we call like a blanket change. You query a whole bunch of records and you say, okay, all the records that fit this query need this change. But it's also very good for cherry picking changes. Sometimes we have to sit down and go through spreadsheets and modify the data. You know, there's certain things that computers can't do. You need the human knowledge behind it to accomplish the change. And we allow for that in PowerGrid. But it doesn't have the burden of exporting and then re-importing to make those changes. You pull down the data here, you make your modifications here, and then you click a button and it pushes them into Salesforce. So you don't have to worry about potentially messing up a spreadsheet if you're like me and, cross-referencing or changing data you shouldn't have been. Like I said, right-clicking is very popular in here. Right-clicking on a column is going to provide to you different options than right-clicking on a row, and then right-clicking on an individual cell. I'm going to go ahead and run through an example, and we're just going to talk about the ins and outs of what we're seeing, what's possible, how different things work here on the left-hand side. And it's like I said, it's a pretty easy tool to work with just because it's familiar. It's a grid that we're all probably very comfortable in. So while it is Excel-like, a lot of the functions are a little bit different. So I just want you to be aware of those similarities that can keep things comfortable for you, but also the differences to make sure that you're running things properly. The first thing we have to do is get some data. Can't modify anything unless we have some records. So we click the Get Data button and a pop-up shows up. It asks you to specify the object you want to change. So if there's a field on the account object, and you're like, oh, I need to change that, that's the object you're going to choose. I haven't done accounts in a while. Let's do that. And then you click Use Object. The next portion here is asking you for a query condition. It is a requirement. If you want to pull down all your records, you'll notice we don't have the Use All Use Condition button here. You can still have a generic Use All condition though, and that would look like this. If you wanted to say, I want to pull down all my records for this object, say the ID for whatever object it is not equal to, that's an exclamation point equal sign represents, and then leave the value box blank and add the condition. Because every record you have has a Salesforce ID, so if you're saying, well, it's not blank, it's going to say, all right, well, all these aren't blank, so here you go. Now, that's great, but keep in mind that PowerGrid was designed to work with smaller subsets of data, because again, this is a more manual process for some of the changes you might make here. So our advice is, around 20, don't max out over 30,000 records. The system is capable of bringing down more and working with more, but you're going to probably see a lag in performance. So at your discretion, but just so you understand what our baseline is, around 20 to 30,000 records. Because if you think about it, if you're sitting down at your desk, how many records are you really going to get through in one sitting before you have to get up and take a break, get some coffee, let your eyes relax? Around that amount seems reasonable, okay, because you can plow through some records pretty quickly. To get rid of a condition, click this blue box to the left and then delete on your keyboard. If anybody's running this on a Mac, you may have to click Function Delete. I'm going to pull down just a small subset, and we're going to do this based off of state, but you can query off of standard and custom fields. So we'll say billing state equals OH, a comma for OR, no space after the comma if you want a subsequent value. Okay, and of course I can write in the long forms too if I needed that. Okay, values here are not case sensitive. And then you add the condition and you'll notice the commas turn into pipes. Right, now if you put a space after that comma, it will corrupt that value and that value won't be seen. If you happen to leave a trailing comma like this, it's indicating a blank. Okay, because if you're saying comma and then nothing, remember leaving that blank indicates a blank value. So just be aware of where your commas are and how you're using them. Now, if I, was to say I wanted a different condition to add to this, we're going to say, it has to be one of these states, and the city has to be one of these. Is that how you spell Phoenix? Let's hope so. And we'll do Boulder. All right, these two conditions are ANDed to each other. That's the default behavior. If you want them to be ORed to one another, you can accomplish that by checking the expert mode checkbox. And you'll notice over here on the right, when I did that, you get these OR groups. If conditions share the same OR group number, like mine do, they're still ANDed. Turning on expert mode just enables the ability to OR things. It doesn't automatically OR them. So if I want them to be OR'd, so I could say in one of these states or one of these cities, I can click in one of the OR groups and either type a 2 or click the directional arrow and click enter. And now they're in their own separate groups, so they're OR'd. Let's say I realized I needed to fix a city in here or add a city, but I don't want to recreate the entire condition. I can click the blue box to the left of the condition, and you'll notice it loads it up top. And I can make an addition here or a modification and click update condition and see how it updated down here. Okay. Now lastly, over on the right, it wants to know what fields you want to see in the result grid. If you plan on referencing a field just for informational purposes, if you plan on modifying a field, bring those fields into the grid. I normally demo with leads, but today we're doing accounts. So let me get my bearings here. We're just going to grab some address fields. And, you know, typical stuff. Address, the company name. Maybe I'll look at the description. It's going to automatically pull in the object ID. So if I want to see that, great, but you don't have to select it. If you want to know if it's a parent record, and we're pulling the name, products of interest, where are you? There you go. Now, if you're seeing these plus signs, those are table joins to related tables. So let's say I wanted to see who owns the record. I can bring in their owner ID, which is that Salesforce alphanumeric ID. I don't know my own, much less anybody else's, so I'm going to need to see their name or email address or alias, something that is a word. To get to that information, you can expand the table join by clicking the plus sign. That now opens up the fields of information for you to access. So I want to grab the person's name. And you'll notice on the right here, when a field comes from a joined table, that joined table's name is prefixed in front of the field. So I know the difference between the owner name and the account name. If there's no prefix, it's come from the main object that you're working with. Any fields that you pull in from a related table, like I've just done with owner, will not be editable. But you can still change the ownership of that record. So I'm going to show you how in a minute, but I want to be clear that when you're working, with an object that you choose, accounts, only account fields are editable. You just got to know which fields are account fields, which all of these main ones are. Okay, but you're like, well, I can change record type, I can change owners. What field do I need? That ID field is key. All right, and we'll see why here in a second. I'm going to click download records. Actually, wait, I'm not. I'm going to rearrange these. In the grid, you can rearrange the order of the fields. I'm just not a big fan of how you do it. I like doing it here because it's a very quick drag and drop interface. I'm not sure why I have latitude. I must have checked it on accident. And instead of scrolling through my list, which I can do to uncheck it, I can also click the blue box to the left and click delete. Sorry guys, I have a little bit of a cough, so I might be muting you for a minute every once in a while. All right, and the rest of the order of these is fine. And of course, top to bottom is left to right. And then download records, and here we go. When it sits at 0 out of 100, we're waiting for Salesforce to pick up the job. So just basically waiting our line in the API queue, or waiting our turn in the API queue. So while we're doing this, does anybody have questions? I know I said I wouldn't purposely stop and ask, but since we have a moment. PowerGrid is actually a really good training to have on a Friday afternoon because I think the information is pretty digestible. It's not super heavy like learning the single table dedupe. Oh, and more people have joined us, I think, so welcome. All right, here's our data. Notice all the fields I asked for, including ID, which I did not ask for, but like I said, that's an automatic field given to you. And, it looks like a an Excel sheet. You've got columns and rows and information, and now we can modify it. I do want to point your attention over here, though, to the owner stuff that we were referencing before we pulled down the data. Notice how an owner name is in italics. Anytime you see a field with italics, it's an indication to you that that field is not editable, okay? So I can't go in here and change the owner name, but I can change the owner of the account record. So hear me out. If I were to try to change the name, what that's actually doing is changing the name associated with this ID. That's not what I want to do. If I want to change who owns the record, I need to change the ID associated to this account. Okay, because if you think about it, when you're on the account record and you click change next to the owner, you have a lookup box, and that's a lookup to your user table, the owner table. That is populated with the user's ID. You guys see the name, of course we do, that makes sense. We're in the user interface, we wouldn't need to see the ID. But in the back, it's translating it to this. Okay, so anybody who's new, hopefully that helps. You're gonna run into that for things like record types, and any sort of lookup field. You know, if you're looking at an account associated to a contact, that's also another lookup where we're going to be referencing an ID. So if I want to change the owner of this record, and this is going to introduce us into how to start modifying the fields, I can do one of two things. I can double click a field, and that opens it up. See how my cursor's in there? And I can delete things, I can freeform type. But this is saying to me, well, you need to know that person's owner ID. I don't know anybody's. So the easier way would actually be to right-click on the cell, click Edit, and then you get a pop-up of all your available users. Much easier. Now, that's one of those things that, no, you wouldn't have known that that was there unless I told you. It's just a nuance of the tool. And when I click Update Value, it's updating into the grid. So it's got that yellow highlighting indicating that there's a change. And if I hover over it, it shows you the original ID that was there. This change has not been posted into Salesforce yet. Okay, so you'll make all your modifications here before they get posted into Salesforce. If I wanted to push a change into Salesforce, and I just want to get this out of the way in the beginning because I know everybody wants to know how to get them in. You've got two buttons over here, Post Data and Exit, and just Post Data. They're a little bit different, not alarmingly so, but slightly. Before I do either of those, however, I am going to save my scenario so we can pull it back up for easy recall. So I'll click Save Scenario, and I'll just toss this on my desktop. Normally, though, actually, no, let's do it here. I would go to Documents, DemandTools Data. We all have that folder. And then I created a PG folder, PowerGrid, so I can put my PowerGrid scenarios there. All right, so we'll just call this Account Demo May and save it. All right, so let's get this change pushed up into Salesforce. If I click this link of the ID, it's going to launch me to that record in my Salesforce environment. If yours does not do that, go to Edit, Options, use Salesforce to view objects, make sure that's enabled. Okay, so use Salesforce to view objects will, when the ID or View button is clicked, will take you out to that record in Salesforce. All right, and so there it is. And I'm going to change the owner. That's the change we have queued up. If I click Post Data, so I'm about to update one record and delete 0. Great. When it's done, you get this pop-up that lets you know if there were any errors. Errors are always reported in your log file. Okay, so notice the file path, Documents, DemandTools Data, Log Files. Mine separated by org ID because I log into multiple orgs, and then the date of the log file. You also get a restore file. Restore files for PowerGrid will always be CSV, and they will always say grid restore. So if you're wondering, well, my default in edit options says XLSX, that's moot here. Okay, restore files for PowerGrid are always CSV. Just a nuance of the grid software that we're using. And that restore file is going to have just the data you need to restore it back to what it was before you made your change. We only process one record, so only one record's here. You have the record ID, you have who owns it before and who owns it now. So if you're looking at this, you can discern, all right, well, this record's owner was changed. Restore files are best processed through MassImpact because that is an ETL tool that references spreadsheets. So if you're ever wondering, you know, how do I do a restore? Jump on the MassImpact class. Okay, so now if you look at the grid, it was refreshed. My ID is showing there. It's no longer in yellow. If I go to Salesforce and refresh my screen, I'm now the happy owner of this account. Now, let's make another change. We're going to make Lori the owner. And I'm going to click Post Data and Exit now. So before I just clicked Post Data, and that was real nice. Pushed in the update, refreshed my grid, and I can still carry on making modifications. Same sort of warning telling you how many records you're about to update in case you only thought one was there, but maybe something down in the mix was also holding on to a change. Now this pop-up, you get your log file, you get your restore file, but it says the grid has not been updated with new results and will reset when this dialog box is closed. So if I click OK, I'm reset back to the beginning. So the post data and exit doesn't mean exit DemandTools, doesn't mean exit PowerGrid. It basically means exiting that scenario that you're in, which is why I saved my scenario. So I can just click load scenario. And it brings up the little pop-up interface again, just double checking, see if you want to make any modifications. If not, just click download records. And there you go. And you can see now Lori is the owner of that record. And if we refresh back into Salesforce, she's the owner. All right, down in the lower left too, just so you can see if you're ever curious how many got brought in, if you didn't look at the query as it was running, it'll show you how many rows you have. So that's how many records. All right, so you can modify a field by right-click and choosing Edit, or double-clicking, and that opens up the field to be edited, so you can, freeform type in it if you want. The right-click and Edit will do the same thing, but it brings you this little pop-up interface as opposed to double-clicking in the cell and just modifying here. All right, so let's say you're looking at this and you're like, ugh, I forgot to bring in a field. On the left, you have a Get More Fields button. When you click that, it's just a little pop-up that lets you bring in other fields. Nothing special about it. But if you thought, oh, we need to get this, download the additional field, it'll bring it in for all records and it'll append it to the end of the other fields. Okay. Now what if you're thinking, well, I need more data. I forgot to query in some records. Get More Data is going to allow you to do that. And in this one, you can't add more fields. You can just add another condition of information to bring down. So I could say billing state equals MA. All right, if I download those records, I'm getting another 10,000. I'm really sort of maxing out what I should be doing here. Now, after I do Get More Fields and Get More Data, if I save my scenario, looks like it's going to save just fine. I want to point out, though, that when I load it again, notice that it held on to the extra field I added, It did not save the extra condition of records. Okay, and that's not because I had saved the scenario and then made the extra condition. It's just a nuance. So what you want to do is save it, come back in here, and then add your condition if you want it to be saved, and then resave it. Don't forget, guys, if you have questions, I'm really happy to answer them. So if something doesn't make sense or I'm going too quickly or you need me just to repeat something, let me know. I don't want you guys to walk away from here confused. All right, and then let's just round out these buttons over here. You have export data, and you can export as formatted or as a data file. If you do as formatted, and these I will put on my desktop. When it's done, you get a pop-up with a link, which is nice because if you're like me and forget where you save things. All right, formatted looks totally normal. Right, looks just like the grid. So if there was any color coding, which we haven't talked about yet, anything like that, it would show up here. All right, whatever you see in the grid is how it's going to look here. If you did as a data file, the ID, oh, it looks like they maybe fixed that issue. Oh, good. Before it used to come in as like a URL, but now it looks like they've remedied that. Nice. I haven't actually done an export out of here in a while. But you're not going to have any pretty formatting here. All right, it's just raw data. But it still has all your fields that were in the grid. All right. Let me check the questions. Nothing there. All right, I was touting some right-click stuff. So we're going to be going back and forth between right-clicking. So I'm going to, let's see, we showed the right-click on the ID. Sorry, my computer's having, there we go. You get edit, clear. If I click clear, it's going to clear off all 31,000 of these. So I can right-click on the column header and then do revert to original. Now, revert to original is not an undo. It's not a proper undo. It's undoing every change. So if there was multiple changes that happened, it's just taking it back to the original value. Okay, you can delete a column. That's just deleting it from this view. It's not doing anything to the data in Salesforce. The move column, that's the one where I said, you can use this if you want to rearrange stuff here. And it's like, okay, you're in position 11. Where do I want this? Position 1, 2, 3, 4. You know what I mean? It's just a little bit cumbersome. So you have to know the number of the cell that you want it to be in. Okay, we saw edit, clear, revert to original. The find replace is actually kind of cool. So let's say in the name column, you can say find replace in this specific column or find replace in the grid. So I'm going to do in this column, and we'll look for CRM Fusion. You'll notice you can match the case. You can do an exact match. You can actually switch the column you want to search in if you clicked on the wrong one when you began. And there's one at 21,325, 25,000. Okay, so it's a nice way if you're searching for a particular record to find that. Maybe I want to make sure that I replace them with our proper name. I could say replace all. Now over here on the left, there's this option called limit records and this button that says show changed rows. I love this and I don't think enough people know about it because it's sort of hidden over there. But it filters out for you all the stuff that doesn't have any changes associated to it, so you can see a comprehensive list of the items that you do have changed. I think that's nice. So like this, I'm like, okay, that's all wrong. Let's get rid of LTD. And then I can say show all records with that button there on the left. Now the other function is if you wanted to just look for specific data. You can query on whatever fields are shown here. And those are the ones that will show up in this dropdown. So you can say the account name starts with Saint. And then click Limit Records. There's all my records in this list that start with Saint. I can add another condition on top of this. I can say that the state equals AZ, and then click Limit Records again. The value is not case sensitive. And if I hover over that red ink that says 2 conditions, I can see what the conditions are. I cannot modify them. I cannot remove one. If I want to start over, I just have to say show all records and begin again. I'm just giving you guys a second in case you're making any notes. Now the sort order, I mean, come on, you know, like in Excel, you can go up and you can do data sort. You've got 3 levels or so of sorts that you can do. Here's the same thing. So if I want to sort by the name, the arrow is pointing to ascending or descending. So if you click on it, it will change. And then I'm going to sort by the state. And I'll just click sort. Okay, and you can see how it's doing the sort and then the subsort. If I wanted this to be descending, I can click the arrow and then click sort again. And there we have it. We have some really stellar junk data in here to play with. All right, so again, just an easy way for you to sort your grid. And I'm just smushing these down, so if you're seeing these shorten up, that's the only reason why. Now, the selection sets, this is just a way of color coding. There's ways to color code in most grid tools. And if you wanted to color code, if you're like, all right, all this is just junk, I could right click on it and I say selection set, and I'm going to make this cyan. So I'm color coding all of these with the cyan. Then over here in selection sets, I can click cyan and say show checked, so only the cyan stuff. So if you look down on the lower left, 56 of the 31,000 records we have. Or I can say show unchecked, so everything but the cyan. And then of course show all. The clear checked will clear the color coding for what is checked up here. The clear all will just clear all color coding. Right, so another way to keep things organized, to sort, to help find stuff. Now, we saw if you click on a column, some of the options that you get, and the options will vary based on whether it's a modifiable column or not. And then the right-click settings on the row are going to be a little bit different. So look down here. See these formulas that we have? These are only going to show up in my right-click settings, if over here on the left in right-click settings, which is very funny that it's called that because it's not the only one. But you notice how they're checked off. So if I take off normalize US address, it doesn't show here anymore. And if you've been working with MassImpact or MassImpact, you may be familiar with most of these formulas. If you're not, though, the help docs gives you a document on the formulas, what they do, if they're customizable, which they're not, you know, just what you expect from them. So let's say I wanted to make sure that all of my states were in the 2-letter abbreviation. Right-click on the column, do state match short, and there it goes. All right, so most of these already were, but it's highlighting the ones where it wasn't. And sometimes if they are in the 2-letter abbreviation and you apply that, it'll show a change, most likely because it's proper case, or not proper casing, uppercasing. All right, so some of these formulas are pretty cool. You can do the same sort of standardization for country. If I had a phone, let's pull that in. Ooh, didn't mean to make that full screen. All right, there's my phone, so I can right-click. Sorry, my computer's really struggling. And we'll do North American phone text. Where are you? There it is. And it just makes sure that everything's formatted to the proper North American standard. Okay, so this one looked like that. It had an alpha character in it. It got rid of. Now, if you're thinking, well, why do you even allow this in PowerGrid if you can do it in MassImpact and vice versa? Again, just because of the volume of data you might be working with. So if you're working with hundreds of thousands of records, do these modifications and standardizations in MassImpact. And bonus, in MassImpact, things like this can be scheduled with Job Builder, which is free. So you can say, you know what, let's have a job that runs every day to standardize my states, my countries, my phone numbers. You can have Job Builder kick it off for you, and you don't have to think about it. PowerGrid you can't schedule, but like I said, for the times that you have to sit down and just go through the data, this is really beneficial. All right, what other right-clicking? So that pretty much, I mean, you got the copy, cut, and paste, which the keyboard shortcuts for Control-C, X, and V will work as well. All right, so I do Control-C, Control-V. Not that I'd ever want to do that, but it works. All right, let's look at some of the right-click on the row. Show record in Salesforce, just like if you were clicking that record ID. Delete record now is actually deleting that from Salesforce. So if I do that, it says this will permanently delete this record in Salesforce immediately. So no, I don't want to do that just yet. Remove from view set, though, is the one, if you're like, I just don't want to see these records or this record, that it will take it out of the grid, but doesn't have any effect to the data in Salesforce. Mark for deletion will give it a red X, so when you click post or post data and exit, it will actually delete the record at that time. Unmark for deletion removes the to be deleted flag. Update rows. So if there's a couple rows that you know you want to push the updates through and you just got to go through the rest and make sure, you can, you know, highlight one or multiple and do update rows, and it'll just process for the ones you have highlighted. Now, if I highlight, let's see, 2 or more records, up to 8, I will also get a merge rows option. You're going to get that for accounts, contacts, and leads. So the merge rows brings up a pop-up interface. If you're familiar with single table dedupe, it looks just like the custom merge interface. Anything highlighted in yellow is the value this process is set to retain. But you can change that. So if you're like, oh, I don't really want that address, I like this one, double click, and that's the value it'll keep. Now, let me show you. If the ink is in green, it means that the selected value is the same as the value shown here. If it's in red, it means it's different than the selected value. So what you should be looking for really is the red. You're looking for where stuff is different and why that value might be the one you want to retain as opposed to the one you want to ditch. And all populated fields are brought to the top, so you don't have to scroll down searching. So when I click accept, and actually I don't want to do on all those because I don't want to hose up somebody's data. We'll just do 2 of them. When I click accept, this is another thing that happens immediately. So if something's going to happen, as you've seen, before you click post data, it lets you know. This is happening now. We're not waiting for you to click post data. And in this case, this is a change that will not have a restore file. We never give restore files for merges. We all know why. It's because of the movement of sub-objects. So Salesforce doesn't even give you a restore file for it. But it's just letting you know. So you can say, yep, go ahead, or no, don't. I'm not going to, actually. If I had, though, the grid would have updated and I would just see the 3B's design. Now, if you're working with leads or contacts, you can associate the lead or contact to a campaign through a right click on the row. Can't do that for accounts because it's just not a function of Salesforce. Also on leads, you can convert them. So right now we're seeing the merge, but on leads you would also see convert. And you can do a straight convert from a lead to a brand new account and contact, or you can do some dupe checking. So it'll automatically check it against contacts and accounts if you decide to do that route, and then you can also do your own custom search if it doesn't find a record that you know is out there that you're looking for. Okay. That's typically why I do my trainings with leads, and at the end, if we need to see it, I can show it to you, but it's just like clicking the convert button in Salesforce. All right, I'm going to just take a pause, see if anybody has any questions. Nobody's dropped off, so either you're enjoying the confusion or I'm being clear. Let's hope it's the latter. These are a lot of new names too, so I'm excited to see you guys on the session. At least I haven't seen you on my session. All right, cool. We'll keep plugging along. Feel free to interrupt though if you need something. Let's look at filters and scoring. So filters and scoring work with selection sets. That's why you see the selection set here. If I click edit filter lists, I get my little pop-up. And you can see I have a list of filters, obviously. But for you guys, you'd want to click add filter. You have to give it a name. And then you have to click add filter row to make the condition. Because these filters help you discern, where data is or what data might be in the system, or not in the system, in your grid. So it's another way of sorting through the data, getting it color-coded, and just organizing it and seeing what's out there and what needs to be fixed. Now, when I click Add Filter Row, a lot of people have asked me, why is your system not smart enough to know which object I'm working with? It is. But in here, filters are a little bit different. They can be theme-based. They don't necessarily have to just be object-based, because the system is smart enough to know that if I have multiple conditions here, one for account, one for contact, one for lead, and because I'm working with the account, it's only going to reference the account condition. Okay, so an example of that would be this one here. Let me show you. State equals CO, state equals CO, state equals CO, right? So it's your Colorado filter, and these are active. So it's going to look at these and say, well, this is the object we're looking at. This is the only one I'm going to worry about. Let's work with this one, and then we'll come back to building a new one. okay? The score says that, all right, if the account billing state equals CO, that record gets a point value of 1. Down here, it's saying that the cumulative score has to be greater than 0, meaning in order for my record to get color-coded, to get marked, it has to be greater than a value of 0, which 1 is. If I had another row here for accounts that said, okay, the city equals Boulder, and also give that a point of 1, what would happen is I would get records scored at 1 where the billing state was CO and records where the billing city is Boulder. If I wanted where only both of those account ones matched, I would have to say this is greater than 1, which that throws off my theme here, but I just want you to understand that that's the way that scoring works. So it has to be greater than a score of 1, meaning both of these filters have to be true for a record to get color-coded. All right, so let's look at that. Now that's when I have selected, you can see on the left. The filter that I'm going to use, or the selection set, is going to be violet. And then I click Apply to Selection Set. And over here on the selection set, I can say, all right, show me just the violet. So show checked. Filters out the rest of the noise. And you can see these are Boulder and Colorado. Not one or the other, but both. If in my filter, let's get rid of this one. Take this back down to 0. And I'm going to clear show all, clear all. I'm just clearing out all the color coding. Now I'm going to do apply to selection set, and you're going to notice that it's just doing the ones for Colorado. So I should have more than 160. So we've got 3,330 now. And you can see that the cities are all over the place because I took out that parameter. All right, some of the other cool things that you can do with filters is there is a junk filter. There's these special filters that we have here. And let me just take you over to the help doc and show you those. Under filters, talks about the filters and scoring at the top. Then it also shows you you've got these special filter types. So sounds like, that's kind of cool. It does a fuzzy comparison on the full field of data to see if it matches a specific value. So if I'm like, sounds like, and what is this one doing? CRM Fusion, it's going to result in records that sound like CRM Fusion phonetically. Okay, so no word characters, looking for fields that just have junk in them. Fields that can only contain vowels or no vowels. I mean, this is kind of nice for you to, find all that junky stuff. Repeating characters, so let's do that one. Account name, repeating characters. And I don't have to put a value. And we'll do this one in cyan. Oops, I need to do here. Cyan, apply. So look, repeating characters. Maybe they're not bad repeating characters, but they're repeating characters. let's see here. Let's look at the junk keyboard entry. And we'll do this one as yellow. I don't know why that was brought up as junk. Maybe because of it just being DFAS. Most likely. All right, but you also have things like is populated, is not populated. So if you're looking for blanks or non-blanks, no word characters. And let me just clear all. So that's where you're going to find stuff like this. Now, if I were to export this, formatted, it's going to give you your score. Okay, so you know that these are the ones that had a score. And also, because my grid was filtered, and I was just showing those, that's all it's exporting. So it's not going to try to export the entire grid with this in it when this is all I'm showing. If I did show all and did the export, it would look like this, but again, have every single record. All right, let me do this. Let's load a different scenario. The last few minutes, I'm just going to go ahead and show you that convert stuff. If it'll download. There we go. Okay, so if I right-click, I can convert the lead. That's the one that'll just take that lead and make it a brand new account and contact, no dupe checking. Convert to existing contact or account is where it does the dupe checking. It's going to do an automatic search for you. Didn't find anything, so you can search your own contacts. And I believe you have to have last name or email for this, one of the two. Here we go. All right, so if I chose my dog's record, it's going to immediately convert this lead into that record I selected. And if you're wondering, well, what happens to all the fields? It's the same as what happens in Salesforce. So it's going to reference your field mapping on your leads for a conversion. It's also going to do the standard Salesforce field movement on a conversion. And the account and contact that it's being converted into, I guess you could say, are technically the master. So those values will win over the lead values. Right? But again, that's all typical Salesforce functionality because we're just calling in their convert code here. I'm just double checking, make sure we've talked about everything. And it looks like we have. We got through this a little bit quicker just because there was no questions. When you convert, will it auto-create an opportunity? Let's go back and take a look. So convert to existing. And for this one, it will not auto-create an opportunity. If you just do convert, you have the option of creating an opportunity. But it doesn't do it on auto. Just like in Salesforce. You know, you can either do it or you don't have to. Now, if you're converting a whole bunch, you know, understand that these opportunities will have to be pretty generic, right? You're going to have to use the company name or something like from lead convert, just so it's not this something specific to one of them, because it's going to show up on all of these that I have highlighted. Good question. Anything else? And while you guys are thinking about that, I do just want to say thank you for taking the time and joining me today. I know it's Friday afternoon and probably not your most favorite thing to do, but hopefully this is a more fun class than you were anticipating. You will get a survey. I don't know if it's going to go out today or if it'll show up on Monday, but it's just asking you to rate the class, rate me as a presenter, and just letting us know what we're doing well and where we could be doing better. So any constructive criticism is welcome. Any praise where we've done well is welcome. And if you guys don't have the time, that's okay. I get it. We all have busy days. But if you do find yourself with a couple of minutes, I think it's like 3 questions, it'd be great if you took the time. So, oh, thanks. I appreciate that. You have a good weekend too. So if there's no other questions or concerns that are being raised, I can go ahead and give you a few minutes back of your day and say have a good weekend, and thanks again for joining me. Oh, great. Thanks, guys. I appreciate the feedback there. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the webinar now. See you next time.